What would you do if your neighbor called the cops on you for wearing a swimsuit at the pool? Yeah. That happened. And it gets way worse from there. Stay with me, because this story? It doesn't just expose a Karen. It exposes everything wrong with how some people abuse power. Ma'am, put your towel down and step away from the lounge chair. The voice was sharp and commanding, and coming from a police officer. Two cruisers sat parked outside the HOA pool, lights flashing under the early afternoon sun. I sat frozen, one hand gripping my sunglasses, the other still holding the book I'd barely started. Behind the officer stood Karen, the HOA vice president, with her arms crossed so tightly I thought her veins might pop. She looked smug, like she'd just accomplished something noble, like reporting a dangerous criminal instead of me. A woman sunbathing in her own neighborhood. You've been reported for indecent exposure, the officer added, ignoring my stunned expression. We need to ask you some questions. That was when I finally found my voice. For what? I'm in a two-piece swimsuit, sir. At a pool. In July. The officer didn't even blink. We got a call. It's been logged. Please step aside. My heart hammered in my chest. My towel slid from my lap onto the concrete. I stood slowly, trying to understand how in the world we'd gotten here. But the thing is, I do know how we got here. And if you're wondering how a quiet woman just trying to catch some sun ended up on the receiving end of a cop's questioning, oh, buckle in. This whole nightmare started 2 months ago, with a pineapple plant and a welcome basket. Back when I moved into the neighborhood, things felt hopeful. After 2 years of scrimping and saving, I'd finally bought a place of my own. It wasn't big, a tidy 3-bedroom townhouse with beige siding and a tiny patch of front yard, but it was mine. I could paint the walls whatever color I wanted. I could burn cookies in the oven without roommates laughing about it. I could start over. I moved in on a Thursday. On Saturday morning, a knock came at the door. I opened it, still in my pajamas, and there she stood. Hi there, she said, overly chipper. I'm Karen. I'm on the HOA board, vice president, actually. Just wanted to drop off a little welcome basket. The basket was full of goodies, packets of seeds, a laminated copy of the HOA bylaws, a small houseplant with spiky green leaves, and a mason jar of homemade jam. Oh wow, I said, genuinely touched. That's so thoughtful. Thank you. Karen smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. We love to welcome new folks. It helps keep the community consistent. I nodded slowly, unsure what she meant by that. Well, I'm happy to be here. It's a nice neighborhood. Her eyes flicked past me into the house. It is. And we work hard to keep it that way. I thanked her again and watched her walk off, clipboard in hand, already scribbling something down. The first 2 weeks were uneventful. I spent them unpacking, trying to learn my neighbors' names, and figuring out the trash pickup schedule. A woman named Jenna lived across from me, mid-30s, worked night shifts, and had 2 yappy chihuahuas. She was kind, always waving when we crossed paths. There was also an older man named Mr. Doyle down the block who gave out popsicles to kids and talked to his plants. Everyone seemed decent. Except Karen. Karen, it turned out, wasn't just the welcome committee, she was the neighborhood's self-appointed watchdog. I'd see her patrol the sidewalks with her clipboard and frown, peeking into yards, jotting notes, and occasionally snapping pictures on her phone. One afternoon, she stopped me as I was trimming the little hedge outside my door. Did you get prior approval for those shears? She asked, nodding toward my gardening tools. My brow furrowed. They're just regular hedge clippers? Karen pursed her lips. We have guidelines. Certain items should be approved by the board before use. Just in case. In case of what? She ignored that. Anyway, your front lights are a little too bright at night. We've had complaints. From whom? My only neighbor was Jenna, and she worked nights. But I didn't push it. "I'll look into it," I said calmly. Karen didn't move. "I'll give you a warning this time. But the next one gets documented." After that, it became a pattern. Karen cited me for leaving a package on my porch too long. Then for watering my potted herbs at 7:30 a.m. instead of 8. Then for putting my recycling out on recycling day, but a little too early in the morning. Every week, another note. Another warning. It would have been laughable if it wasn't so maddening. Jenna rolled her eyes when I told her. "She's always been like that," she said, sipping iced tea on her porch. "She's got nothing better to do. But it's worse with you. New people make her twitchy." "Why?" I asked. "Because you don't play her game." Still, I tried to stay kind. I waved when I saw Karen. I responded politely to her emails, even when they made me want to scream. I followed every absurd HOA rule just to keep the peace. But that wasn't enough. Then came the pool. HOA residents could access the community pool anytime between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. You needed a fob to get in, and each household was allowed 2 guests. It was one of the few things about the HOA I actually liked: a quiet spot, good sun, clean water. I didn't know many people in town yet, so I'd go solo sometimes, bring a book, and relax for an hour or 2. That Saturday was hot. The kind of heat that shimmered off the sidewalk and turned car seats into frying pans. I packed a towel, water bottle, and a light snack. I wore a regular 2-piece swimsuit, modest cut, nothing flashy, and walked the short distance to the pool. There were only 2 other people there when I arrived. A teenager with earbuds in and a mom teaching her toddler how to float. I settled into a lounge chair in the corner, far from everyone, and pulled out my book. I didn't see Karen walk in. I didn't even realize she was nearby until I heard the faint shutter sound of a phone camera. I turned. She was standing just outside the pool gate, pointing her phone in my direction. I sat up, confused. "Karen?" She didn't respond, just turned around and walked off briskly. I figured it was just another weird Karen thing. Maybe she thought I left trash behind or something. I went back to my book. A few minutes passed. The toddler shrieked in delight as she floated with water wings. I took a sip of water and let the sun warm my skin. Then, the police arrived. 2 cruisers. Lights flashing. I didn't understand what was happening at first. I thought maybe something had happened nearby, a car break-in or something. But the officers walked straight toward me. They asked me to stand. Said I'd been reported. That someone had claimed I was acting indecently. At a family-friendly community pool. My mouth went dry. "You're joking." Karen stood nearby, arms crossed. The same smug look. Not saying a word. That's when I realized this wasn't just an HOA power trip. This was personal. I started to explain myself to the officers, hands slightly raised, but one of them raised a hand to stop me. "We're going to need to ask you to step outside the pool area for further questioning," he said. "We'll sort this out." Behind me, I heard the mom whisper something to her kid and gather her things quickly. The teenager had his phone out now, recording everything. And just as I stepped through the gate with the officers, my phone buzzed in my tote bag. A message from Jenna. "Are you okay? Karen just posted a photo of you on the neighborhood Facebook page. She's saying you were exposing yourself to children at the pool. People are freaking out." I stared at the screen. My ears were ringing. I hadn't done anything wrong. But now? Now my name was being smeared across the internet. And Karen wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The officer opened his notepad. "Let's start from the top," he said. And that's when I saw a 3rd cruiser pull up. A different officer stepped out. But this one wasn't here to question me. He was here for Karen. And the look on her face? Now that was the first thing that gave me hope this might not end the way she planned. The third officer's boots echoed against the concrete as he walked toward us. His name tag read Officer Mallory. He wasn't rushing like the others, he moved with quiet purpose, like someone who already knew what mess he was stepping into. Karen's crossed arms slowly dropped to her sides as she noticed him. Her jaw tightened. "Karen Hale?" Officer Mallory said. Karen hesitated. "Yes? I need to speak with you. Privately." The two other officers, who'd been questioning me, exchanged a quick glance. One of them subtly shifted his stance, as if bracing for something. I watched, stunned, as Karen tried to regain her composure. "About what?" she asked, her voice high and too sweet. "Step over here, please." Karen's face turned red, but she obeyed. They moved out of earshot, just beyond the pool gate, but I could still see them. Karen's mouth moved quickly, angry, defensive. Officer Mallory remained calm, barely reacting. I stood frozen, towel still clutched in one hand, my nerves rattling. The mom and her toddler were gone. So was the teen with the earbuds. I was now alone, barefoot on hot pavement, under the sharp glare of police lights and HOA judgment. It didn't make sense. Nothing about it did. I wasn't the kind of person to make enemies. I kept to myself. I followed the rules, even when they were ridiculous. So how had this spun so far out of control? The answer, in part, started 3 weeks ago. That was the first time I actually challenged Karen. It had been a small thing, barely even a confrontation. I'd gotten an email from the HOA about a supposed violation for placing an outdoor pineapple plant too close to my walkway. It wasn't blocking anything. It wasn't in anyone's path. It was just there. A cheerful little spiky thing in a ceramic pot. But the email said it didn't meet visual standards for decorative flora. And it had to be removed within 48 hours. I was tired. It had been a rough week at work. My water heater had burst 2 days before, and I was living on ramen and lukewarm showers. So I did something I'd never done before. I responded. "Dear HOA Board, I'm kindly asking for clarification on how my plant violates visual standards. I've reviewed the guidelines and cannot find anything that applies. Please advise. Thank you." I CC'd the whole board. That email didn't sit well with Karen. The very next day, I had a notice pinned to my door, another violation, this time for porch clutter. The only thing on my porch? The same plant. 2 hours later, I saw Karen pacing in front of my unit with her phone out again. That night, I found a thread about me on the HOA's private Facebook group, one I hadn't known existed until Jenna showed me. Karen had written a long, dramatic post about new residents disregarding community standards, flagrant disrespect for neighborhood beauty, and inappropriate outdoor displays. And people believed her. Or at least, they didn't question her. Except Jenna. Jenna replied with a photo of her own porch, which had 3 potted plants and a welcome sign shaped like a gnome. Guess I'm violating too. Who wants to report me? But that wasn't the end of it. Karen kept escalating. A week after the pineapple plant incident, I got another notice, this time about my attire at the mailbox. I'd gone out in joggers and a tank top to grab my mail. Apparently, a concerned resident felt I wasn't dressed appropriately for shared spaces. I laughed when I read it. Then I cried. I started to feel paranoid. Every time I stepped outside, I wondered if Karen was watching. Waiting. Documenting. Jenna offered to come with me the next time I went to the pool. "That woman's going to get slapped with a karma sandwich one day," she muttered. But I told her no. I didn't want Karen thinking she'd gotten to me. So that day, I went to the pool alone. And now, here I was. Officer Mallory returned first. Karen followed, visibly rattled, lips pursed so tightly they almost disappeared into her face. She avoided my eyes. The other officers turned to Mallory. "We'll take it from here," he said. One of them nodded. "You got it." The two original officers walked off, leaving just me, Officer Mallory, and Karen. He turned to me. "Miss Walker, would you mind sitting on the bench over there for a few minutes? I'm going to finish collecting statements. I'll come back to you shortly." I nodded, still trying to process everything. I sat, wrapping my towel around my waist. My hands were shaking. Karen stood nearby, pretending to scroll through her phone, pretending none of this bothered her. But her shoulders were tense. Her jaw clenched. I didn't know what Officer Mallory had said to her. I didn't know what he knew. But I knew something had shifted. About 10 minutes passed before he returned to me. "I appreciate your patience," he said, his voice calmer now. "I've reviewed the situation, and I've got enough context for now. If anything further is needed, we'll reach out." "Wait, am I being charged?" "No," he said, giving me a small, reassuring smile. "But I would recommend you document any further interactions you have with Ms. Hale moving forward. We've had a few similar complaints." "Similar?" I repeated. He didn't answer directly. "We're keeping a file." A file. That was the first time I realized this wasn't just my story. Karen had been pulling this stunt with others too. I wasn't alone. Relief washed over me, but it was tangled with something heavier. Anger. Sadness. The realization that people like Karen got away with this kind of behavior for far too long because most of us just wanted peace. We ignored the whispers. We stayed quiet. Until they came for us, too. That night, I got a knock at my door. I opened it to find Jenna holding 2 milkshakes from Sonic and a look that said she already knew what had happened. "You okay?" she asked. I took the strawberry shake from her hand and nodded. "Barely." We sat on my front steps in silence, sipping. The sky turned purple, then navy. Crickets chirped. A breeze rustled the trees. "Do you think she's going to stop?" I asked. "Nope," Jenna said. "Not unless someone makes her." I looked at her. "Someone like who?" She shrugged. "Maybe someone who's not scared anymore." I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Because that was the moment I decided I wasn't going to hide behind politeness anymore. I wasn't going to let someone else control my peace of mind. I'd done nothing wrong. The next morning, I emailed the full HOA board. I attached photos, timestamps, and every notice Karen had left. I included a link to the video the teenager had posted on TikTok, which was already gaining traction. I explained everything. Then I went down to the community center and filed a formal complaint. That should have been the end of it. But Karen? Karen wasn't done yet. Not even close. Because 2 days later, I came home from work to find a bright orange notice taped across my front door. Final warning, HOA review hearing scheduled due to community misconduct allegations. Attendance mandatory. And that's when I realized Karen had declared war. The orange notice flapped in the wind as I stared at it. My stomach twisted. It looked official, HOA letterhead, stamped date, and a scheduled hearing just 3 days from now. No explanation. No specific violation listed. Just the words community misconduct allegations and a stern reminder that failure to attend could lead to further action, including potential fines or suspension of amenity access. They were threatening to take away my pool access. The same pool where I'd been publicly humiliated and falsely accused. The irony was almost laughable. Except none of this was funny. I pulled the paper down, went inside, and dropped it on my kitchen counter. For a full minute, I just stood there, watching the ceiling fan spin above me. 1,000 thoughts spun in my head even faster. I had followed every rule. I'd documented everything. I'd even filed the formal complaint the officer suggested. And now I was the one on trial? I picked up my phone and called Jenna. I knew she'd try something, she said the second I told her. She's not used to being challenged. I don't even know what I'm supposed to defend myself against. You won't be defending yourself, Jenna said. You'll be walking into an ambush. She wasn't exaggerating. The hearing was scheduled for Thursday at 6 p.m. in the HOA's community center. I arrived 10 minutes early, wearing a neat blouse and jeans. I had a folder full of printouts, emails, notices, my complaint form, screenshots from the Facebook group, and the viral video that had now hit 14,000 views. The parking lot was fuller than I expected. Apparently, HOA hearings weren't usually well attended, but word had gotten around. Karen's latest drama had people curious. Inside, the room was set up like a makeshift courtroom. A long table faced rows of folding chairs. Behind it sat the full board, 6 members in matching navy polos with little HOA logos. In the middle, of course, sat Karen. She smiled when she saw me. But it wasn't friendly. As the meeting started, the president of the board, Mr. Langford, gave a dry welcome and listed the topics of the day. Mine was last. While they reviewed minor parking disputes and lawn decoration complaints, I sat with my folder in my lap, trying to steady my breathing. My palms were sweaty, my heart pounding like it was trying to warn me. Then Mr. Langford called my name. I stood and walked to the small table set in front of the board. Everyone in the room turned toward me. I felt like I was back in high school, about to give a speech I hadn't prepared for. Miss Walker, he began, adjusting his glasses. We're here today to review concerns brought to our attention by Vice President Hale. There have been allegations regarding improper behavior at the community pool and inappropriate responses to HOA directives. I blinked. Improper behavior? Yes, Karen chimed in, clearly thrilled. I submitted evidence of Ms. Walker's consistent disregard for community standards and her hostile reaction to reasonable enforcement. I tried not to laugh. Hostile? The only thing I'd ever attacked was a cucumber vine that tried to strangle my rosemary plant. May I respond? I asked. Mr. Langford nodded. Please do. I opened my folder and started calmly. I walked them through every notice I'd received, starting with the pineapple plant. I showed the email trail, the photos, and the timestamps. I explained how I'd followed every rule and sought clarification each time. Then I brought up the pool incident, the call to the police, the false report, the trauma of being questioned publicly for simply sunbathing. Karen accused me of indecent exposure, I said, my voice shaking now, not from fear, but from the effort it took to stay measured. I was in a regular swimsuit. At the community pool. Where I have every right to be. Several heads in the room nodded slowly. I placed the printout of the viral video on the table. This video was taken by another resident. It clearly shows that I was doing nothing wrong. Yet Karen has continued to harass me, escalate things, and now, somehow, turn this hearing into a punishment for me. I looked at each board member, one by one. I filed a formal complaint last week. And if this board allows these retaliatory actions to continue, then you're telling every person here that following the rules doesn't matter. Only power does. Silence. Karen looked ready to burst. Then she did. She's manipulating you, Karen snapped. You're only seeing what she wants you to see. She has no respect for the community. Her tone, her defiance, just look at how aggressive she's being right now. Aggressive? I'd spoken calmly the whole time. If anything, she was the one shaking. Mr. Langford raised his hand. Ms. Hale, please. But Karen wasn't done. She's been undermining me from the day she moved in, Karen hissed. Mocking the rules, disrespecting this neighborhood. She's turning people against me. Karen, one of the board members, cut in. A woman named Sandra, soft-spoken but firm. We've reviewed the documents. We saw the video. And frankly, We're concerned. Karen blinked. Concerned? Yes, Sandra said. Concerned about your conduct. A wave of whispers rippled through the room. Mr. Langford cleared his throat. We're going to take a brief recess before we make any decisions. The board stood and stepped into the hallway. Karen stood frozen in her chair, red-faced, jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. I returned to my seat. Jenna gave me a small smile from the second row. I didn't smile back. I couldn't. Not yet. 15 minutes later, the board returned. Mr. Langford adjusted his glasses again. After reviewing the situation and all provided documentation, we've concluded that the allegations brought against Ms. Walker are unfounded. No action will be taken against her. Relief rushed through me so fast it nearly made me dizzy. But then he continued. However, the board has concerns regarding Vice President Hale's behavior. We will be conducting a formal review of her conduct in the coming weeks. Karen stood abruptly, knocking over her chair. You can't do that. Karen, Sandra said quietly, we can. And we are. Karen stormed out of the room without another word. The door slammed behind her. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, someone in the back let out a small, slow clap. Another person joined in. And then a third. I sat there, stunned, as the room filled with soft, hesitant applause. Not for me, necessarily. But for the fact that, for once, someone had stood up to Karen and won. I packed up my things and left without a word. Outside, the air was cool. The sun had set. Lights from the community center glowed faintly behind me as I stepped into the parking lot. I thought it was over. I thought I could finally breathe again. But when I got home, I noticed something odd. My porch light was shattered. And my pineapple plant? Gone. Pot and all. And sitting in its place was a pile of glass shards. And a single dead rose. Karen wasn't just angry. She was unhinged. I stood there for a long time, staring at the broken glass and that withered rose. The air felt heavier now, thick with something I couldn't name. My porch light had been smashed, clearly on purpose. Glass glittered like frost along the welcome mat. The dead rose had been left carefully, almost ceremoniously, where my pineapple plant used to sit. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't even clever. It was a message. I bent down and picked up the rose. Its petals were dried out, curling in on themselves. Someone had snapped the stem halfway and left it balanced just so, like it had been placed there with intention. I felt the anger first. Then came the fear. Jenna rushed over the moment I texted her. She didn't even knock. She just burst in, eyes wide. What happened? I showed her the porch. Her lips tightened. She did this, she said. I didn't reply. We both knew who she was. Call the police, Jenna said. Report it. But something in me hesitated. It's just a light, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Maybe a coincidence. Jenna gave me a look. A smashed light, a dead flower, and a stolen plant, all days after she got publicly humiliated in front of the entire HOA board? No way this is a coincidence. She was right. But what would a police report even do? Karen hadn't left fingerprints. She hadn't written a note. It was just intimidation, quiet, cowardly intimidation. And yet, I couldn't sleep that night. Every time a branch brushed against the window, I jumped. Every creak in the hallway made my breath catch. I left a lamp on in the living room and sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, listening to the stillness. It had been years since I'd felt that kind of fear, the kind that didn't come from a single loud bang or a dramatic scene, but the slow drip of dread. The feeling that someone was watching, waiting. The next morning, I made a decision. I bought a small security camera and installed it just above my porch. It wasn't expensive, and I didn't tell anyone, not even Jenna. I needed to be ready in case something happened again. I was done hoping Karen would stop. For a little while, things were quiet. The HOA board didn't say much after the hearing. A few neighbors I barely knew waved when they saw me. One even brought over muffins and mumbled, "Sorry about all that mess." Karen stopped walking her usual patrol route past my house. I didn't see her clipboard. I didn't get any more notices. It felt peaceful. Suspiciously peaceful. And then, about 2 weeks later, something strange happened. I was walking back from the community mailbox when a man I didn't recognize stepped out from behind the hedge near the pool entrance. He was tall, wore sunglasses and a gray hoodie even though it was warm, and held a clipboard. "Miss Walker?" he asked. I stopped. "Yes?" "I'm with the HOA Oversight Committee," he said. "I'm conducting a private survey of community satisfaction. Just a few questions." I raised an eyebrow. "We have an oversight committee?" "Yes, ma'am," he replied quickly. "We're a new subcommittee authorized by the board. It's voluntary." Something didn't sit right. His tone was practiced. Too smooth. He flipped open the clipboard. "How would you rate your current satisfaction with HOA leadership on a scale from 1 to 10? I glanced at his badge. There wasn't one. "Where are you from exactly?" I asked. He shifted. "Just helping collect feedback." I stepped back. "If you're really with the HOA, you'd know I already submitted formal complaints. This is all documented. I'm not answering anything off the record." His expression flickered, just for a moment. Then he nodded, closed the clipboard, and walked off without another word. I watched him until he rounded the corner. The second he was out of sight, I walked fast back to my house and checked the HOA website. No new subcommittees had been announced. No surveys. No man with a clipboard. This wasn't a survey. This was something else. Later that night, Jenna and I combed through the community's online forums. She was good at digging. In less than an hour, she found 3 anonymous posts from neighbors in different sections of the development, all describing the same thing. A man with a clipboard asking questions about residents. About their schedules. Whether they had cameras. If their houses were usually empty in the afternoons. It was subtle. But dangerous. "This isn't just harassment anymore," Jenna said, her voice low. "It's stalking." That word sent a chill down my spine. I replayed the man's questions in my mind. They hadn't been about HOA satisfaction. They'd been about access. About opportunity. We reported it. This time, we didn't hesitate. Officer Mallory came to my house personally. He took our statements, asked detailed questions, and reviewed the security camera footage. Unfortunately, the man hadn't come close enough to trigger the motion sensor. Still, Mallory didn't downplay it. "You're not the only person who's made a report," he said. "Keep the camera. Add another if you can. And don't go anywhere alone for a while." I nodded. "Any chance this is connected to Karen?" I asked, not quite able to finish the sentence. Officer Mallory didn't say yes. But he didn't say no either. After he left, Jenna turned to me. "We need to talk about the board." "What about it?" "There's a rumor," she said. "Karen's trying to get reinstated as president. Langford's stepping down next month." My blood went cold. "She's running for president?" Jenna nodded. "She's already got 2 members on her side. If she wins, it's over." The thought of Karen having that kind of power, official power, after everything she'd done? It was unthinkable. And suddenly, all the odd things started to click. The survey. The stalking. The Facebook posts are planting seeds of doubt about my character. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was a campaign. Karen wasn't just trying to punish me. She was trying to silence me before her comeback. And I knew right then, if I didn't stop her, she was going to destroy this entire neighborhood just to feed her obsession with control. But before I could figure out how to stop her, my security camera pinged. A notification. Motion detected, front porch. I opened the app, expecting to see a delivery truck or a neighbor's cat. But what I saw instead was a gloved hand reaching up to cover the lens. Then, static. And just before the feed went dark, one chilling frame. A shadowy figure placing something beneath my welcome mat. I jumped to my feet, heart hammering in my chest. Jenna stood beside me, pale. "We need to see what that is," she whispered. I opened the door. Lifted the mat. And there, tucked in a clear plastic bag. It was a single Polaroid. A photo of me. Lying by the pool. Taken from behind a bush. Karen wasn't working alone. The Polaroid shook in my hand. Not because the wind was blowing. Not because the photo itself was flimsy. But because I couldn't stop my fingers from trembling. In the picture, I was lying on the pool chair in my swimsuit, legs stretched out, head tilted back, completely unaware. Completely vulnerable. The angle of the photo made it clear, someone had been hiding. Watching. Waiting for the right moment to capture it. And they weren't just watching now. They were toying with me. Jenna snatched the bag from my hand and examined it closely. "This isn't from Karen," she whispered. "She's nasty, yeah, but this is another level." She was right. This felt colder. More calculated. Karen was the type to scream in your face, slam a door, and call the cops. But this had silence in it. It had planning. And that meant something worse. Someone else was involved. I called Officer Mallory again. He showed up less than 15 minutes later, even though it was almost 10 p.m. He looked at the photo, his face hardening. "We're escalating this," he said. "This isn't HOA territory anymore. This is harassment with possible criminal intent." Jenna stayed with me that night, even though she had to leave her dogs at home. We deadbolt every door, checked every window twice, and placed a chair under the back door handle. Neither of us slept. In the morning, the board released an emergency bulletin via email. Due to recent safety concerns reported by multiple residents, the HOA is enacting a temporary review of board leadership structure and investigating potential breaches of conduct and personal privacy. It wasn't naming names. But it didn't need to. People in the neighborhood were talking. Whispering. And not just about Karen anymore. About the shadow figure. About the so-called survey man. About what had happened at the pool. For the first time since I'd moved in, people were asking questions. That same morning, I checked my mailbox and found a flyer tucked between the envelopes. It was printed on glossy paper with bold red text. "Vote Karen for HOA president, restore order to our community." There was a photo of her smiling next to the HOA entrance sign and a list of vague promises: safety, consistency, community standards. Jenna held the flyer like it had bitten her. "She's really going through with it. She's doubling down," I said. Worse still, I learned through one of the quieter board members, an older man named Mr. Claymore, that Karen was gathering proxy votes. Legally, if a homeowner couldn't attend the upcoming election meeting, they could sign over their vote to someone else. Karen was knocking on doors, convincing elderly residents and absentee landlords to trust her with their ballots. "She already has 23 proxy forms," he told me in a hushed voice over the phone. "Langford only won last year by 18 votes. If Karen got back into power, she could rewrite policies, revoke complaints, and block investigations." The camera footage. The porch incident. The Polaroid. It could all be buried. "She's trying to clean the slate," I murmured. "Before it all catches up to her." And then it hit me, if she wasn't working alone, then who was helping her? The clipboard man. The person who took the photo. The one who vandalized my porch. It had to be someone in the neighborhood. Someone who had access. Someone she could manipulate, pay, or threaten. It had to be someone close. That night, Jenna and I devised a plan. If Karen could campaign in secret, then so could we, but better. We started knocking on doors too. Not to collect votes, but to wake people up. We shared what had happened to me. Showed them the warning signs. Explained how power in the wrong hands could destroy a peaceful neighborhood. At first, people were hesitant. No one wanted to take sides. But then Jenna showed them the photo, the one of me on the pool chair. The one that someone had slid under my mat. That changed everything. Some residents were furious. Some were frightened. And some had stories of their own, small things they'd brushed off before. A neighbor's mailbox being left open. A dog let out of a fenced yard. Security lights unscrewed at night. Weird survey questions asked by a man with a clipboard. One woman, a mom of 3 who lived 2 blocks over, told us that Karen had offered to take care of her loud neighbors if she signed her proxy vote over. She said she had resources, the woman said. At the time I thought she meant connections in the HOA. But now? I don't know. We gathered statements, copied them down, organized them neatly into a shared folder. Our plan was to present it all at the election meeting, make it public. Expose her. Not just to the board, but to the whole neighborhood. But we had to be careful. If Karen caught wind of it too soon, she'd bury it before it saw daylight. So we kept it quiet. Too quiet. Because the day before the meeting, I came home to find something waiting for me in the mailbox. No envelope. Just a folded piece of white paper. No handwriting. No greeting. Just one sentence, typed. If you speak at the meeting, we'll make sure no one ever sees you again. I froze. The fear that had simmered beneath the surface all this time, quiet and manageable, boiled over into full panic. This wasn't just HOA drama anymore. This was criminal. This was dangerous. I showed Jenna. She paled. This is beyond Karen now. This is someone who thinks they're untouchable. I called Officer Mallory again, hands shaking. When he saw the paper, he didn't flinch. We're assigning a patrol car to the neighborhood tonight, he said. You'll be safe. But the look in his eyes said something different. He didn't know if that was true. Jenna and I debated whether I should still speak. Whether the risk was worth it. She wants to scare you silent, Jenna said. That's how she wins. I stared at the letter. She doesn't get to win. The next evening, I put on a blazer, gathered my notes, and walked into the HOA meeting like I was walking into a courtroom. The room was packed, standing room only. Every seat is taken. Neighbors lined the walls, murmuring, holding flyers. Karen was already up front, in a navy dress suit, smiling like a politician. When I walked in, her smile flickered. The board took their seats. Mr. Langford, weary and clearly ready to pass the torch, opened the floor. Karen stood first. She spoke confidently, blaming recent incidents on new residents who misunderstood the structure and value of HOA leadership. She promised safety, accountability, and a return to the values that made the neighborhood great. People clapped. But not as loudly as I'd expected. Then it was my turn. I walked up front, heart pounding. I cleared my throat. My name is Lily Walker. I moved here 4 months ago. And I want to talk about what happens when power is abused. The room fell silent. I told them everything. The violations. The harassment. The police. The fake survey, man. The stalking photo. The note. I read it aloud. And then I showed the evidence, carefully, calmly, page by page. Gasps. Murmurs. Faces turned toward Karen. Her smile was gone now. Her hands were balled into fists on the table. I don't think Karen acted alone, I finished. But she opened the door. She gave someone permission. And if we give her power again, we're saying that's okay. I stepped back. And before the board could respond, something happened that shattered whatever Karen had left of her grip. An older man in the third row stood up. I didn't recognize him at first. He wore a windbreaker and held a clipboard. But when he spoke, my blood turned to ice. I was the one with the clipboard, he said. Karen paid me. The room exploded. Chairs scraped the floor as people turned to face him. Several gasps echoed. Karen froze mid-blink, her mouth slightly open, lips parted just enough to reveal her perfectly whitened teeth. The man, tall, wiry, somewhere in his 60s, didn't flinch. He just stood there, his clipboard held loosely in one hand, his eyes dull and flat. "My name's Douglas Crane," he said, his voice firm but eerily calm. "Karen hired me to gather dirt. I used to be private security. Nothing official. Just local jobs, repos, background checks, watching cheating husbands. She said she needed help dealing with a problem neighbor. She told me she wanted to catch someone breaking HOA rules. She said she'd pay extra if I could make it look bad." He glanced at me. "She gave me your photo. Told me to follow you. Said you were a troublemaker. She wanted proof of inappropriate behavior. Told me if I couldn't get it, I should make it up." A horrified silence spread across the room. Karen's voice cracked as she finally stood. "He's lying. He's trying to ruin me." Douglas didn't even blink. "You paid me through your husband's old business account. I have receipts." Karen looked around wildly. "He's a criminal. He's stalking me now. He's probably the one leaving things on my porch." "No one left anything on your porch, Karen," came Sandra's voice from the board table, quiet but sharp enough to cut through marble. "We checked security logs. Your camera wasn't even plugged in. You just told people it was." "Mr." Langford stood slowly, cleared his throat, and faced Karen directly. "Do you deny paying Mr. Crane to collect surveillance on Ms. Walker?" Karen's voice faltered. I was trying to protect the neighborhood. I was trying to maintain standards. You people don't understand how bad it can get if we let things slip. She disrespected the system, she undermined everything I worked for." Sandra rose next, flipping through a thick folder in front of her. "You didn't just hire someone to take photos," she said. "You stalked a resident. You filed a false police report. And based on what we're now hearing, you may have orchestrated threats using another individual. We found the envelope with the typed note, Karen. We found it in a dumpster near your husband's old storage unit." Karen's face went pale. "I don't know anything about that," she screamed. "This is a setup. She's framing me." Someone in the crowd shouted, "Then why'd you smash her porch light?" Another person added, "We told you she was unhinged." Karen backed away from the table now, hands trembling. Jenna stood up in the second row and said loudly, "She threatened me too. 2 weeks ago. Said I'd lose my property rights if I kept siding with the enemy. That's the exact phrase she used. She's been bullying everyone for years. You all just finally saw it." Karen was shaking now. She reached into her bag, people flinched, but she only pulled out her phone and began dialing, stumbling toward the door. Officer Mallory was already standing at the back of the room. He stepped forward with 2 other officers, calm but firm. "Karen Hale, you're not free to leave right now. We have a warrant to search your home and devices in connection with an ongoing harassment and privacy violation case." Karen's phone dropped from her hand. The room went completely silent. And then she ran. Bolted through the side door, pushing through 2 folding chairs and knocking down someone's water bottle. For a moment, it was just chaos, people gasping, standing, and shouting. But Mallory and the others were fast. By the time she reached the parking lot, they had her surrounded. They didn't tackle her. They didn't need to. She stopped, dropped to her knees on the pavement, and screamed. Not words, just sound. Just a long, ragged scream that seemed to shake her entire body. Back inside, no one moved. It was like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. And then someone started clapping. Slow. Loud. Deliberate. It was Sandra. And one by one, the others joined in. I didn't clap. I just sat back in my chair and closed my eyes. It was over. The next day, the board held an emergency meeting and disqualified Karen from any future HOA positions. Sandra was appointed acting president until a full vote could be held. The man Karen hired, Douglas, was also taken in for questioning, and while he faced charges for trespassing and unauthorized surveillance, he agreed to testify against her in exchange for leniency. Karen, meanwhile, was charged with filing a false police report, harassment, and conspiracy to commit intimidation. She posted bail, but the damage was done. Her house went up for sale 2 weeks later. I watched the sign get hammered into her yard on a Monday morning. The agent was polite. I didn't say a word. But Jenna brought over coffee and said, "You just took down the neighborhood dictator." I laughed, finally. Life slowly returned to normal. No more anonymous threats. No more smashed lights or porch notes. I planted a new pineapple in a blue ceramic pot. This one is bigger and brighter. And I left it in the exact same spot. And I started going back to the pool. One afternoon, I lay in the same chair where this all began, book in hand, sun on my skin. An elderly woman I'd never met before walked past with her tiny dog and waved. "Glad you're still here," she said warmly. "Some of us were afraid you'd move out after all that madness." I smiled. "Nope. I like it here. Besides, someone's got to keep an eye on the pool." She laughed, and her dog barked in agreement. And for the first time since I moved in, I felt like this was actually home. The shadows were gone. Karen was gone. And the sun felt warmer than it had in months. So, next time someone like Karen tries to ruin your peace, remember, you don't have to stay quiet. You don't have to stay small. And if this story made you feel seen or fired up, hit that like button, share this with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories where justice actually shows up. See you in the next one.